On this channel, we focus on the latest archaeological discoveries, and we're excited to share that we have many recent treasures to showcase. In this instance, we're talking about actual gems. Archaeologists are always at work, meaning there's something new to present every week of the year. This collection is just as impressive as the ones that came before it. Let's dive in. King Arthur is a British legend, but the evidence that King Arthur ever existed in real life is tenuous at best. If he ever did exist, perhaps his remains are among the 65 royal burials that were identified in a new report that was published in March 2022. The study suggests that the graves of several dozen kings, queens, princes, and princesses who lived between the 5th and 7th centuries have been overlooked by archaeologists because they weren't elaborate burials and contain little in the way of valuable grave goods. This period of British history is poorly understood, as it happened after the end of Roman rule, but before the beginning of the late Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and very few records were created or kept. It's during this time that King Arthur is said to have lived, but the story of Arthur is very much a case of a legend filling in blanks where few facts exist. The proposed royal burials are split between 20 sites in England and Wales, but mostly within the counties of Cornwall and Somerset. Many of the grave sites will now be studied in more detail to see if the theory can be verified. Our next discovery comes from the Croatian island of Var, or to be more precise, from beneath the streets of Starograd on Var. Archaeologists on the island are currently celebrating the discovery of an intricate and beautiful Roman-era mosaic. They think the geometric mosaic was part of a large Roman villa that once stood there. The mosaic is just 2 feet below street level, so it's thought to be a near miracle that it hasn't been extensively damaged by water intrusion. The threat of water intrusion is even worse now the mosaic has been exposed. This part of the island is very close to sea level, and flooding is a routine problem. Archaeologists and residents both hope that funding will be provided for a plexiglass cover so the mosaic can be protected from the elements while remaining visible to all who walk down the street. Before that can be done, though, further excavations will have to be carried out. The experts need to know how much of the mosaic is still there beneath the ground before they can work out how best to protect it. There was a lot of excitement at the site of the 100-year-old Malawi Market Mosque in Mangalore, India, in April 2022, when renovation work revealed the presence of a structure akin to a Hindu temple hidden within the mosque. The structure has been effectively hidden in plain sight for decades, but its presence became obvious when the outer walls of the mosque were torn down as part of the ongoing renovation plan. Images of the discovery went viral on Indian social media, but the renovation work continued until several Hindu groups gathered at the site to demand the work be stopped until the structure could be properly examined. They think that an old temple was converted into a mosque without permission, and they'd like government forces to intervene and have the temple restored to its original state. However, there's some confusion about what the structure actually is. While most observers report that it looks like a typical Hindu temple, others say that it's a Janbari. Thus far, Majid authorities have rejected both claims and say that the structure that's been revealed is simply part of a much older mosque. Based on these images, that seems unlikely. In early April 2022, archaeologists working in the ancient city of Knidos in Turkey came across 4 rare Umayyad inscriptions etched onto marble and limestone blocks. The ruined city is approximately 2,600 years old, but the inscriptions are more recent. Based on the brief period of the city's history where the Umayyads were in control, they must have been etched onto the stones between the years June and July 11th. Knidos was originally founded by Greek settlers and became an important center of trade and politics. The medical school that was founded here trained many of the ancient world's most important physicians. Coming back to the inscriptions, their content concerns a series of Umayyad expeditions to Istanbul and lists the names of all the tribes scheduled to participate in the exhibitions, including the leaders of each tribe. These are the oldest Islamic relics in Western Anatolia, dating back to the early years of the Islamic religion itself. Many of the names of the tribal leaders featured in the inscriptions are new to historians, so the team working at the site hopes to find more inscriptions that might tell them more about who these people were and what they achieved. In April 2022, a dog called Cat Juice was out on a walk with his owner close to the southwestern Polish town of Wałbrzych when he spontaneously started digging. By the time he was done, he'd unearthed the largest collection of medieval Bracteate coins to be found in Poland in the past century. The coins had been buried together in a pot, and the professional archaeologists who attended the site of discovery identified that the bracteates had been minted between Saxony, Silesia, and Brandenburg during the early 13th century. They're in remarkably good condition for their age, with clearly visible depictions of mermaids, angels, and griffins reflecting the superstitions of the people of the time. Finding bracteate coins in good conditions is a rare event because the sheet metal they're made from is so thin. Repeated use quickly makes them threadbare, and after a few years, they were usually withdrawn from circulation so they could be melted down and then stamped again. Hoards of bracteates are exceptionally rare, and large caches like this are virtually unheard of. An amateur metal detectorist is every bit as capable of finding a priceless ancient artifact as a professional archaeologist. To prove it, here's a stunning gold brooch that was found in Pusey Vale, Wiltshire, England in March 2021. The brooch is covered in an ancient inscription, and historians think that the inscription might have been a magic spell designed to fend off illness. It's a product of the medieval era, and was most likely made in either the 12th or the 13th centuries. The inscription around its edges is written in Latin, and translates to Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. The brooch is tiny, so the ancient craftsperson who created it must have been incredibly skilled to etch such a long inscription into it. The Latin text is joined by 5 Hebrew letters, and these letters are what's thought to constitute the magic spell. Belief in magic was rampant in the England of the time, and the practice of keeping magical objects on your person to ward off illness caused by evil spirits was widespread. Our next recent discovery might prove to be the most significant archaeological find of the decade. It's an entire underground city that was found in Turkey in April 2022, and the archaeologists at the scene believe it might be the largest of its kind in the world. Excavating this long-lost city is going to be a slow and challenging process. Thus far, only 3% of the city is thought to have been dug up, with new tunnels, rooms, passageways, and artifacts discovered every day. The city had somehow evaded attention until now, despite being in the middle of Mardin in Midyat, which is an area already well known to archaeologists and also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Archaeologists have tentatively named the city Madyat, which translates as City of Caves. They think it was created around 1900 years ago, probably as a place for people to hide or escape to. Christianity wasn't an official religion during the 2nd century, so followers of the Christian faith had to stay hidden to avoid persecution from Rome. It's possible that up to 70,000 people lived down here in the darkness during Matthias' peak years. Toward the March 2022, road workers attempting to improve 5 Mile Lane near Bury in Wales accidentally came across various ancient relics dating from the Roman era to medieval times. The most remarkable discovery made by the road workers is the burial of a Roman mercenary who still has his sword by his side. They also found the foundations of roadhouses, more graves, and farming tools from the Iron Age. The finds are still being documented and analyzed, but they'll all eventually find their way to the National Museum of Wales so they can be exhibited to the public. The presence of the Roman mercenary is unexplained. There aren't any known Roman settlements near here, and there are no other Roman burials in the vicinity. All of the other grave sites found by the road workers are far more recent than that of the mercenary, who appears to have been buried alone. The explanation could be as simple as his comrades simply burying him where he fell, but we'll likely never know for sure. The history of salt production in Europe might have to be rewritten after this next discovery, which was made in April 2022 and also happened in England. Archaeologists in North Yorkshire have identified an ancient salt production facility, and they think it could be 6,000 years old. That would make it even older than Stonehenge. The salt production site is in the middle of a site called Street House Farm, which was already known to archaeologists prior to this latest find. Evidence of salt processing identified at the site includes broken Neolithic era pottery, ditches full of salt deposits, a storage pit, and 3 hearths. This is comfortably the oldest facility of its kind ever found on the British Isles, and testing could yet reveal it to be the oldest in Europe. In addition to that, the suggestion that salt was being produced here deliberately 6,000 ago flies in the face of the idea that the ancient Britons didn't transition away from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle until about 4,000 years ago. The next oldest salt-making production facility ever found in the UK is a mere 3,600 years old. So the next question for scientists is why there's such a big gap and why this facility appears to have existed in isolation. Our next discovery isn't a physical artifact, it's a new theory. After studying 50 ancient engraved stones imported to the UK from France, researchers from England's universities of Durham and York announced in April 2022 that they believe some of our earliest ancestors created intricate works of art inside their caves by firelight. The experts analyzed the designs on the stones, also known as plaquettes, and concluded that they were carved using primitive stone tools by the Magdalenian culture, which existed in France between 37,000 ago. The stones were created towards the end of that period, approximately 15,000 years ago. Scientific analysis of the artifacts revealed tiny patterns of pink heat damage around the edges, which is as consistent with the idea of the stones being close to a fire while they were being carved. Until now, it's always been assumed that visual art like this would have been created in broad daylight. Perhaps the Magdalenians were simply too busy during daylight hours to spend time practicing arts and crafts and saw it as a way to wind down in the evenings instead. Back on the topic of large-scale physical discoveries, an enormous Hanseatic League ship was found close to the Estonian capital city of Tallinn in April 2022. This has always been an excellent place to look for old ships, as Tallinn port is one of Northern Europe's oldest and was once a vital trade center connecting Viking Scandinavia to Rurik Novgorod. It's clear that the coastline has changed a little since then though, as the 700-year-old ship was found beneath the modern city streets. The location was once the mouth of the Harjapi River, but the river no longer exists. The League ship is the largest shipwreck of its kind ever discovered and would once have been a cog ship working between Russia, Estonia, and England as part of a trade network. The Hanseatic League controlled the lion's share of maritime trade in this part of Europe during the medieval era, and vessels like this one were the reason why. When the Danish king Valdemar VI tried to go to war with them and reclaim trade supremacy, the Hanseatic League humiliated him by forcing him to sign a peace treaty that gave the Danes even lower sea trade profits than they had before the war began. The entire ship will be removed and preserved, but the process could take years. Our next discovery takes us to England, where Amy Clapp of Derbyshire got the shock of her life in February 2019 when an old desk left to her as an inheritance by a distant relative turned out to be keeping a secret. While it might be a pretty piece of furniture, the bureau itself is nothing special and doesn't qualify as an antique because it was made during the 20th century. However, hidden inside the bureau, Amy found 3 secret drawers that couldn't be accessed from the outside. 2 of them were empty, but the third one contained a rare 650-year-old coin in near perfect condition. She took it straight to an auction house to be valued, where expert Don Collins said the only other place he'd seen this coin in his whole 50-year career was in pictures inside reference guides. It's a Raymond IV, Prince of Orange, franc-copied, minted in 1365. The bureau is only worth around $100 and Amy plans to keep hold of it, but given that the coin is worth closer to $3,000, she decided to cash in on her good luck and sell it. The history of human settlement on the British Isles dates back thousands of years, so finding Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age relics there isn't uncommon. However, this Bronze Age haul found in Cumbria in 2017 archaeologists responsible for its discovery. Unusually for the Bronze Age, the bracelet and set of 3 lock rings are all made of gold and are of a design never before seen in Britain. Whoever owned them clearly knew their value because they hid them in a small hollow inside a limestone ridge and then covered them over with a rock, keeping them safe for 3,000 years. Historians can't agree on what the lock rings were used for. Some believe that they were earrings, while others feel they were more likely to be hair decorations or another form of personal ornament. The discovery was made close to the location of an Iron Age hill fort and also an ancient stone circle, so this place was obviously significant to the ancient residents of the area for several centuries. That raises the possibility that the items were placed here as an offering rather than as a form of storage, although we'll never know for sure. Gold is very much the theme of this video, and so here's another golden discovery from the Indonesian island of Java. It's a collection of 22 small gold plates, each inscribed with religious symbols. The plates were found together in a stone box not far from an ancient Buddhist temple. Expert archaeologists who were called to the scene in Rangilarak village after the discovery was made accidentally by construction workers building a water aquifer think they were made during the 8th century. Each of the plates is 18-karat gold, and the symbols are mostly dedicated to the Dua Lokapala, who were the wind gods of the Javanese Hindu-based religion. The Central Java Heritage Conservation Agency took ownership of the artifacts after they were discovered in September 2016, but ensured that a finder's fee was paid to the construction workers and also to the owner of the land the discovery was made on. Given the placements of the plates inside a decorative box, it's likely that they were buried in the ground as a blessing or an offering when work began on building the nearby temple. Finding an undisturbed tomb is as close to a guarantee of finding treasure as you'll ever find in the world of archaeology. That proved to be the case yet again in Cyprus in 2016, when archaeologists from Sweden's University of Gothenburg opened a Bronze Age tomb in the city of Hala Sultantique, becoming the first people to see and site it for 3,200 years. There they found more than 100 mostly intact ceramic vessels, along with gold beads, earrings, and scarabs that appear to be of Egyptian origin and design. The tomb is unusually large and appears to have been built for a family of 9 adults and 8 children. Aside from ceramics and jewelry, there were gemstones, cylinder seals from as far away as Syria and Mesopotamia, and 1 bronze dagger. As valuable as the items made from precious materials are, archaeologists are just as fascinated by the elaborately decorated ceramics, which feature detailed illustrations. One vase in particular, which bears the image of a woman in a dress, has been taken as an example of the clothing worn by the richest women of the era. Great discoveries aren't always about monetary value. Historical value is just as important. Our next discovery isn't ancient, but it's a reminder of how different the culture of the United States of America was as recently as 100 years ago. In November 2020, a couple in New York was in the middle of renovating their home when they discovered a secret cache of whiskey hidden in cavities behind the walls, with even more stashed away beneath the floorboards. There were 66 bottles in total, and they confirmed something the couple had been told when they bought the home. Local legends said that the century-old property once belonged to one of New York's most prolific bootleggers during the Prohibition era, but no evidence in support of that idea had ever been found until the whiskey discovery. The illicit booze has survived the passing of the years so well because it was delicately wrapped in paper and then insulated with hay. Perhaps unusually for a bootlegger, the whiskey isn't homegrown. It's an ironically named imported Scottish brand called Old Smuggler Gaelic Whiskey and is still made by the same company today. All of the alcohol is still safe to drink, so the lucky couple has started selling them at $1,000 per bottle. Human beings have demonstrated many different ways of mourning for lost loved ones over the years. Queen Victoria of England, for example, exclusively wore black after the death of her husband, Prince Albert, in 17th century Wales, though it was more common to display your grief by wearing a specially engraved mourning ring of the kind that was found in a field in Gower in late 2014. The ring is mostly made of gold and silver and is inscribed with the message, "Prepared be to follow me." The well-preserved ring was considered to be of such value that it automatically became the property of the British Crown, with the metal detectorist who found it paid a finder's fee. The practice of wearing mourning rings is believed to have begun on the British Isles during the Middle Ages, but became more common during the 16th and 17th centuries. Tradition dictated that the name of the deceased would be engraved somewhere on the ring, so this example is notable for the absence of any such name. The sentiment shared on it instead was presumably relevant to the person who received it, but sadly, we'll never know their identity. We have to go back a little further in British history to trace the origin of the Bedale hoard, which was discovered in Yorkshire in February 2012. This impressive collection of 48 gold and silver artifacts are of Viking design and were made during the late 9th and early 10th centuries. Among the vast array of objects included in the hoard are ingots, armbands, necklaces, bands, rivets, rings, brooches, and a stunning sword pommel. Although there's little doubt that the artifacts were owned by the Vikings, and in most cases made by them, they also show evidence of Irish and Russian design influences, as well as Anglo-Saxon elements. Historians say this is especially significant because it demonstrates the level of connectivity and interaction between European nations more than 1,000 years ago. This collection was probably equivalent to somebody's life savings. It comes from a time where coins weren't in common use in the British Isles, and so trades were negotiated based on bullion weight instead. It was probably possible to buy quite a large quantity of goods in return for the sword pommel. Amateur archaeologists Therese Refsgaard and Brian Christensen weren't sure of the value of the treasure they discovered on the Danish island of Jarno in 2016, so they took them to a museum in nearby Vela for an expert opinion. When the experts immediately demanded to know where they'd found their artifacts and asked them to keep the discovery secret, they realized they'd found something significant. The collection of gold objects they found while out scouring the island with metal detectors came from the German Iron Age and were made during the 6th century. By the time professionals finished excavating the site, they'd found 32 artifacts, including beads, needles, pendants, and coins. Some of the artifacts have incredibly ornate designs, including a few that archaeologists have never seen before. Whoever made them must have been an exceptionally talented goldsmith for their era. Aside from being valuable, the finds are also historically significant, as some of the artifacts appear to be Roman in origin. They indicate a degree of contact between the people of the island and the Roman Empire prior to the arrival of the Vikings. Finding gold treasure is the ultimate goal of any archaeologist or treasure hunter, regardless of whether that gold has been sculpted and turned into jewelry or whether it's still in its raw, pure form. Perhaps the ultimate treasure discovery would be a vast gold deposit, which is exactly what Ferhatan Poyraz found in Turkey in late 2020. The previously unknown deposit is believed to contain just under 100 tons of gold. In monetary terms, that quantity would be worth around $6 billion based on current market prices. That's more than the total gross domestic product of several small countries. Poyraz works for a fertilizer manufacturing company and made the discovery entirely by accident close to Sagat in the west of the country. Extracting all of the gold from the ground will be a complex operation and is likely to take close to 2 years, but once it's done, it will provide a significant boost to Turkey's economy. This is the second large-scale gold discovery in Turkey in recent months. A further 38 tons of the precious material were found in September. A gold discovery doesn't have to be enormous in order to be interesting. Even a single gold coin can be enough to get historians excited, so long as it's the right coin. This gold coin found in Friedenbeck, Germany in December 2017 meets that description. The tiny unit of currency was minted in the year March during the reign of Roman Emperor Constans and is believed to be the only surviving example of its kind in the entire world. It's a special type of coin known as a multi-plum and was discovered within a burial ground at the Friedenbeck site. Coins like this were only created on special occasions and were generally given out by the emperor as gifts to favored people during ceremonies and festivals. It's rare for one to be found outside the traditional borders of the Roman Empire, so this one was most likely worn by a Germanic ruler seeking to legitimize their localized power by showing they were favored by Rome. The empire is known to have used Germanic forces as auxiliary troops during this era, so the reward was probably handed out after significant victory in battle. There are many myths and legends handed down from generation to generation in Scotland. One of them speaks of a battle between the ancient Scots and Viking invaders in the region of Galway. In 2014, metal detectorist Derek McLennan discovered that there was more to that story than mere myths. Working alone, Derek found over 100 Viking artifacts in the Galway area, and his collection is now known as the Galloway Hoard. The objects are more than 1,000 years old and are considered to be the most significant Viking discoveries ever made on the British Isles. The most stunning piece among the collection is a beautiful silver Anglo-Saxon cross that most likely belonged either to the Viking king or one of his favorite clerics. The ornate object is black and yellow with gold leaf decoration and has etchings of biblical symbols related to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's one of the most exceptional examples of Viking craftsmanship of its era and is valuable beyond measure. It's equally hard to assess how much the whole collection is worth, but the fact that Derek was paid a $2,700,000 finder's fee for his troubles gives you an idea. We're back to coins again now with a collection that was found in Slovakia in late 2018. These 40 silver coins are known as tetradrachms and were the most valuable unit of currency created by the Celts who once lived in Masovj, close to Turkanska Taplica. The Celtic system of currency worked on multiples, with tetradrachms at the top of the system and worth 4 times more than the next most valuable coin. To drive home their value, Celtic coin makers also made them 4 times as heavy as the next most valuable coin, so they wouldn't get mistaken for any other design. This region of Slovakia was an important cultural center for the ancient Celts, most likely because of the abundant quantity of natural resources, including the silver deposit that these coins were made from. It appears that they were buried deliberately, but the sack they were buried in rotted away over time, and so their contents were left strewn over a steep slope, half buried in mud. Coin burials were traditionally common on the eve of battles for the Celts, so archaeologists are now looking for evidence of a battle in the surrounding area. There's been a lot of buzz in British newspapers recently about the discovery of what's been described as Churchill's sunken treasure, although it might be more accurate to describe it as India's stolen treasure. In February 1941, the SS Garsopa was on its way from India to the UK, laden heavy with $200 million worth of Indian silver to bolster the British war effort. It never made a home to port. It was sunk by a German U-boat and went down off the coast of Ireland. The wreck of the vessel was finally found after years of searching in February 2011, but was split open so badly that its contents had spilled out across the sea floor close to Galway. It wasn't until very recently that the bulk of the silver was located, and it took the Odyssey Marine Exploration Company breaking the world record for the deepest salvage operation in history to retrieve it. Even with all that effort, there's still more silver to be accounted for. There were 7,000 tons of silver aboard the Garsopa in total, and at least 3 tons of that are still missing. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.